more and more poor women, because there are no rich women, no rich people in prison. So you're dealing with poor women, you're dealing with poor mothers, you're dealing with African, Asian, Latin American, and indigenous women who are in those prisons are being dehumanized. They're snatched up off the street, given all kinds of time. And I think that it is important for women to be activists in dealing with women in prison and freeing women in prison. So I say that if you call yourself a woman that identifies with the liberation of women, then identify with the most oppressed, exploited women in the United States.
I'm an activist against the prison system because as the prison system works now, I have seen so many great ideas, lives, and spirits just completely squashed by the bureaucracy and by the total abuse and dehumanization that goes on within these walls. It's time that we learn to stand up.
You cannot look the other way and say it's not my problem, because it's everybody's problem.
I think it's very important that people, men and women, get involved, whether they have a family member in custody or whether they just want to do something in terms of human rights. They need to know and be active in people's lives. Just because they're locked up doesn't mean that we don't still exist.
I'm a prison abolitionist because I want to live in a world where every single person, regardless of race or income or sexuality or health or gender or educational background, has an opportunity to thrive. Not just survive, but thrive. I want to live in a world that doesn't organize itself around violence and punishment and confinement. I want to live in a world where we believe that every single person who's here is worth caring for, where we no longer throw people away.
I'm convinced that if the general public knew what actually occurred in prison settings, how prevalent the domination is, society would argue against it and eventually abolish prisons. I mean, we can just look at the exposure of the torture in Abu Ghraib, and people are horrified. Nobody has to look far to find other examples right here in this country, in these prisons, of torture and abuse. People must become activists because each of us is always affecting each other and our world in every relationship and in every situation. By the character of our presence, we profoundly affect each other and our sense of selves, of possibility, of hope, of this world that we live in.
We all have to participate in that process of trying to imagine worlds that do not rely on violence and do not rely on confinement and imprisonment as the solution to the problems we face.
I think that young people, whether you're in college or whether you're in prison, you need to do what you need to do to make the next century belong to the people, because this century has been 100 years more of slavery.